All right. Well, last week we were kind of talking about we were talking about communication, and we're just kind of it's on. I'm being recorded. Yeah, we're being recorded. Uh, but anyway, just kind of finishing up the topic of communication, even though this topic of communication will continue throughout our study in marriage. You know, we talked about the building blocks of marriage, and we talked about building that house and the foundation that we've already talked about the foundation of marriage, setting the roles that God has set in place, and all these things just build upon one another as we try to make our marriages stronger. And when things like the roles are confused, or we have problems in marriages, or we have in communication, or we have problems in other topics that we might discuss later on in our study here, it will erode the house. It will make the house fall down. It cause a foundational crack, and you know what that will do to a house, but also what it will do to our marriages. So we were talking about communication. I know we're kind of checking up on the latter part here, but handling conflict biblically. You know, we've talked a little bit about this already, but we said that the most important thing to do is to deal with issues promptly and not let them, Ephesians 4, verse 26 says, be angry, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger or give us opportunity to the devil. So we already talked about there are going to be conflicts in our marriage. There are going to be hard times when we don't necessarily agree with one another or issues that will happen. And but the most important thing is that we handle those conflicts uh, uh, quickly. Again, I'm not saying it would happen, but just might not happen that day, but it's just something that we just don't want to let fester because we know what will happen there. It talks about giving a opportunity for the devil. But handling conflict biblically, things that we need to avoid. Again, the silent treatment. You know, if we have something that we're upset about, we'll just stop speaking to one another. Another thing is emotional withdrawal. Just emotionally, just staying away from your partner or your spouse, and then he's letting this bitterness grow. The more and more we let that bitterness grow in our lives, and even in our just our marriages, but this can happen in our um, with one another. It can this same thing can happen here. So not just necessarily for marriage, but also this could be with us when we with one another here. Um, so fighting fair. Okay, I put the word fight there, but um, and again, when I say the word fight, I mean it's not like we're punching and fighting each other. Maybe it is, I don't know. But how we handle that biblical conflict resolutions, staying on the topic. Again, we might have talked about this before, but don't resort to name call. This can all happen. People that we get upset. Next thing you know, people are being called names and no threats. This is what I'm doing, if this doesn't happen my way, or this is what's going to happen. And we don't want that to happen. And no bringing up unresolved issues. And again, we're striving not to have unresolved issues, but bringing up things in the past, bringing up things that, here we are, we're talking about this subject. And next thing you know, we're talking about something that maybe happened, unfortunately hasn't been resolved yet, but something that keeps going on, and they bring that up. A couple can bring that up to one another. Um, Proverbs 17:14. I didn't bring my notes today, but I'm just going off the screen here. The beginning of strife is like letting out water, so quit before the quarrel breaks out. Again, we've talked about this already, that God has blessed you with this spouse. This spouse chose you. Your wife chose you. Your husband chose you. There's going to be times. There's going to be our marriages are going to be times when we have to forgive, and we have to I don't know, when people say be the bigger person or whatever, we should both be the bigger person, um, but, but when you see, when you see something's getting heat up, we need to get to the point where we can stop the quarrel before a quarrel breaks out. And again, what the most important thing is to stop conflict early. Um, but things we can do, and this word comes up a lot, but practice forgiveness. Again, Colossians 3, we can go there, Colossians 3. And again, this was not written specifically for marriage, with regards to a married couple, but it's talking about one another. But it says, as God chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must always forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love that binds everything together in perfect harmony. So again, when we're talking now this particular, when Paul's talking here to when he wrote this letter here to Colossians, he was talking to them, but this concept also binds us. It applies to us in a marriage relationship, just as it does for us as Christians with one another. And forgiveness is really important, and we've talked about it there. Marriage requires ongoing forgiveness. Um, I don't know if that's, it's just something that, again, I'm gonna fail Shelley. I'm gonna do something that unintentionally, maybe sometimes it's intentionally, and I'm gonna need her forgiveness. And what's the most important thing about forgiveness? When we forgive, we forget. Well, we try to, right? And again, that's hard to do, isn't it? It's hard to forget, but
I don't remember where I read it or when I read it, but it basically said that marriage is not 50-50.
right.
100.
Okay. Okay.
Both in the same.
Yep.
Room
Yep.
together, trying to work
Yep.
this out here. What you're talking about is a situation. You're trying to solve the problem, and that's the thing that you're trying to do as a partner.
Mm-hmm.
Come to the understanding of what's the problem and how you fix this.
Okay.
How you fix each other, how you fix the problem.
Right. Great point. That's we come together and we're trying to solve a problem or solve something, and a lot of times it's the little things, right? Uh, it's not the big things, even though there are some big issues that come out here, but it requires ongoing. And when we think about forgetting, we go to God, we fail God every day, don't we? The Bible says that we all sin, we all fail. And do we expect God to, well, I'm going to forgive you, but I'm going to remember that, Richard. We don't want God to do that. And we should be the same way with our spouses. We should be the same way with our brothers and sisters. We should be the same way with everybody, really. Um, how often should I forgive my brother? 7 times or so, So that's really important. And again, remember, you will both fail, but grace must be mutual. And we have to understand that. So that's a really important thing. How do we build a culture of grace? Again, healthy marriages are not conflict free. If we think that we're going to get married and we're going to live together with our spouses and we're not going to have a disagreement, then we're looking back at the Walt Disney World and they lived happily ever after. And but yeah, there's going to be conflicts that, and there could be, again, a lot of times it's just little things, but sometimes the little things can turn into big things. But they are filled with grace. So health marriages aren't conflict free, but they are filled with grace for one another. And then how we build it. Well, how do we do this? Again, encourage each other daily. First Thessalonians 5:11 says, therefore, encourage one another and build one another up. It's important that we do this. I mean, with one another, but it's also important to do that with our spouses. How can we encourage one another? How can a spouse encourage another spouse?
You find things that they do for you even, and you compliment them for
Okay.
that. that little extra effort or just the fact that you remembered something that they like. And
Yeah.
you go out of your way to make sure you provide that, all those things enter into it.
Yeah. You know, and it's sometimes that I get to the point, and again, we can become to a point where we can be, it becomes, I'm going to say it, um, I can't think of the word right now, expected, or I mean, it's just something that we just, it's just we see it day to day. Shelley's really good at that. Shelley is good at thanking me for things. Sometimes she thanks me for things that I don't know why you're thanking me for that. But but I mean and that is she's doing that to encourage me, build me up, and I appreciate that. But there's things that we can say, things we can do. Again, not this particular what Paul's talking here, not necessarily talking to married people, but he's also talking to us as Christians, and it applies to us as married people as well.
The less you thank and encourage your spouse or others, you take them for granted.
Right, that's the word I was going to use. Taking for granted, that's it, but yes.
Yeah, you have to be careful.
Yep.
I think also encouraging your spouse and others in general is encouraging yourself a lot of times,
Yeah.
especially when it's biblically.
Great point.
Very true.
You know Daryl Townsend,
Uh-huh.
fellas up there in Middleburg and stuff, and that was a big thing. You know, sometimes you kind of lose sight of what you're doing because you get in a systematic way of doing things, going to church, going to Bible study, and you just kind of get this have the sheet fork kind of haze you're in sometimes. Sometimes you got to break out of that and have those personal interactions with people to encourage them to kind of remind yourself what you're doing, why you're doing it. You know what I mean? And I think the same thing with your spouse. You can get to kind of stagnant kind of state where you're not really necessarily doing anything wrong if you're just going through the motions and it kind of disconnected. So I think to encourage people and have that personal attention towards somebody else, it kind of brings attention to yourself at the same time.
Good point. Yeah, because when we do that, we're doing exactly what the Bible tells us to do. We're putting others in front of us. We're thinking of other people, and that does benefit us. So that's a great point that you bring up there. Again, speak affirmations regularly. Again, we have to be careful when we get to the point here where it's I love you, I love you, I love you, and those words can just mean words. We got to the point where when we say stuff, we have to mean it. And so that's really important. And us, the thing is to pray together. Again, I've already brought this up before, but praying together, putting that into God's hand and let God become part of that bond between the one and two of you. What does prayer do? Prayer softens the heart. When we got a conflict going on and we get together and we pray about it, all of a sudden it should, I mean, hopefully would soften our view. Maybe I'm not where I need to be, or maybe, when I start, getting God involved here, and sometimes it helps us realign our priorities. And again, it invites God into our disagreements. Yes, sir.
I watched a sermon just yesterday, a little short clip of Joby Martin. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a pastor at something 11 Church in Jacksonville. I don't agree with all his theology, but he said something. People say, "How do you stay so humble?" And he said, "Get married." because it's a constant thing where there's nobody less impressed with you than your wife, really. It's not like he was saying it's not like you go change the trash and she says, "Hey, you need to go be the quarterback, stop changing the trash." You know what I mean? So it's like that humility goes along, coincides with what you're talking about as far as having that meekness and self-awareness, of just realizing, it's one thing to say, I love you. You can just kind of get in that motion,
Right.
that systematic motion of doing that, where you can say something a little more descriptive, and it just kind of
Right.
changes the whole awareness of how you perceive what you're saying,
Yeah.
and in yourself in the same sense. It's like I can say I love you, And then it's like, okay, on to the next task, but you can stop just for a second and say, I love you. I really appreciate why you did that.
Oh,
You know what I mean? And it helps,
Yes, sir.
bring some more awareness, not just to your partner and what they're doing, but, why you're saying it and where you're
Mhm.
coming from.
Mhm.
So,
Point. Excellent point. Okay. Um, but couples who pray together strengthen communication spiritually, and that's the most important thing that we can do for one another. Also, keep short accounts, address small issues before they become long ones. We're gonna hopefully my plan is to get into the Song of Solomon a little bit. Probably not in this lesson here, but maybe further down the road here. But it says, "Catch foxes for us, little foxes that spoil the vineyards." Um, we're going to talk about some foxes that can be involved in our marriages, but basically, this what Solomon is saying here is catch the little things, catch the little foxes before they turn into bigger foxes and they do more damage into a marriage relationship. So, um, little misunderstanding again can grow into large resentments if ignored. So again, we just have to remember that can just go on and on and on. Strong marriages are built one conversation at a time, one apology at a time, and one act of grace at a time. So again, this is just talking about that when two people get together and they want to make a marriage work, it's going to involve talking. It's going to involve communication. It's going to be involving the fact that I'm going to fail my spouse, and my spouse is going to fail me. And we need to understand that and apologize and ask for forgiveness. And then that act of grace at a time that we realize that my spouse is a child of God. And I'm going to, if she comes to me and says I'm sorry I did this, and I'm going to forgive her for that, just like I expect God to forgive me for that. So, when communication reflects Christ, again, we talked a little bit about this, but pride decreases, understanding increases, unity increases, and healthy marriages, healthy communication produces healthy marriages. So I think that's it. So that was kind of what I had for communication. Anyone want to talk more about communication? Are we done with communication? I hope I can do this here, but let's see what I can do here. So, here we go. So like I told you last week, I want to get now into another part. Okay. What happened? What I did?
That's very.
There we go. Okay. Um, anyway, so I want to get into a little more. Another part of marriage is the fact that God's designed for physical and emotional intimacy. Um, again, God created intimacy. Intimacy is not man's idea. It's not, but it's not a man idea, but it's God's gift. And we can go back to Genesis chapter 2, again, at the beginning there with Adam and Eve. And there in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 24, it said, "Therefore, a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked, and they were not ashamed." So we see here that physical um, intimacy here is the key idea here is that marriage is the only God approved relationship for sexual intimacy, and it is designed to be pure, joyful, and unifying. So what God has shown here, what God has provided here, what He has done here, what He has given man, time, is this intimacy relationship when He's talking about one flesh here. Um, again, God's design for sexual intimacy. God is sex created and good. This is not something that is not dirty or shameful within the marriage relationship. It was designed before sin entered the world. Again, going back to Genesis chapter 1, and there in verse 27, it said, God created them male and female. And he said there, God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply. So the whole sexual, what God had planned, the sexual relationship for Adam and Eve and for mankind began there in the garden. And the purpose of that was unity, as he said here, that he said, they shall become one flesh. So it's a deep bonding. That's kind of small there, but deep bonding beyond physical. So this is just, again, he's also talking about the physical relationship here, but he's also going to be talking about the emotional relationship as well, which we will talk a little bit, a little later here. But also it is meant for pleasure. Again, Proverbs chapter 15, 18 through 19 is a verse there that Solomon wrote that said, rejoice with the wife of your youth. And we're going to talk about some other things, especially when we get into the Song of Solomon, that the sexual intimate relationship is one for pleasure, that God has provided that. And then also procreation. We know that as a natural result, of the physical union of male and female, but it's not the only purpose. So why do you think God included pleasure as part of marriage intimacy?
Probably is encouragement to procreate.
Okay.
I would think first and foremost.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I also agree with the fact that it also does a bondage.
Yeah.
It provides a bondage for one another. Hopefully, again, I don't think, I mean, it is for procreation, but I don't think that was God's, I hate to say God's main purpose of that. I mean, it's a part of it, what happens with it, but we know many, when we go through the scriptures here, especially when we talk about in Proverbs there, it talks about a rejoicing. It's talking about loving, being with one another. So, but yeah, I think it's a fact that God wants us to be close with one another.
I mean, from a scientific standpoint, it's a fact that oxytocin is something a
Okay.
woman releases when she has a child. You know, I was probably going there.
Mhm.
And that causes her to bond to the child.
Okay.
In a sexual aspect, the same chemicals released to a woman when she is intimate sexually with her husband.
Okay.
And that creates that same bonding.
Okay.
So I think, I mean, first I would say procreation. We'll
Mhm.
just do that, and then secondly, it would be probably, in my opinion, would be the bonding
Okay.
factor. Yeah.
If it was just a job,
Hmm.
you probably avoid it.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I was like, I gotta do this, it's my job.
Okay.
Some women probably still see it.
But then
Okay.
but to me, then there's other issues,
But you're right. I mean, I think yeah, if it was something that was just something, I got to do that or whatever. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was something we would steer.
Well, I'll tell you a story.
All right, turn that thing off.
My best friend's grandmother,
Okay.
I remember shared with us one time that I always looked at Granny and Papa, that's what I call her grandparents, as they didn't even like each other.
Okay.
And she shared with us one time that she was brought up that sex was only for getting pregnant.
Okay.
So she had no bond with him at all. They had two girls,
Okay.
and she didn't elaborate, but it was like, to me, in their 50-year marriage, that was it.
Okay.
She, or they tried other times to have kids, but he kept a mistress.
Mm.
That was her pleasure. She was the one she raised a family with. He raised a family with. And that was just so,
Yeah.
what?
Right.
But that's how she was brought up.
Yeah. But we see here again that we don't see that in the scriptures here,
Right.
again in Proverbs.
And they didn't go to church.
You mentioned Proverbs, but it says that you should be intoxicated.
Yes.
by your wife.
Yes.
So you are not intoxicated by someone else.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that word up because I was going to use that a little later. But yeah, the intoxicate. I mean, your spouse is supposed to have that feeling with you, and if we're just if we have the concept, like Shelley said, that we're doing it, we're going to come together just for the purpose of creating a baby, um, we're not going to want to have a baby all the time. So we're not going to be intimate with one another except for those very few times or whatever we want to have a child or whatever. But and again, this is something I don't that God did not intend, as we can see here in the scripture. Um, but again, physical intimacy strengthens emotional connection. Again, it creates a closeness. It creates a security. It creates a bonding with one another. It should just be this way. But when we neglect that, it creates distance. It creates, it can lead to frustrations. It can lead to loneliness. It can lead to temptations where one will go be outside the marriage relationship to whatever. So we have to be very careful because the Bible in our marriage relationship, and I know a lot of people use this scripture in the wrong way, but with regards to biblical, what the Bible says with regards to intimacy, it says the husband should give his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband, for the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a set time, to devote yourselves to prayer, and then come together, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. And again, I say that because I know I've heard that, people have gotten. I've heard people in relationships where people say, um, you know, this Bible says you have to do this, and or whatever like that. And the Bible does say that, and this is a what they call an aha moment in marriages is the fact that we learn that this is unselfish action here. This is not about a husband, for saying what he wants and what a wife says, but they doing it together. It comes together as mutual. Now, what this also talks about is there is a time that possibly you might refrain from this. There might be a time where things will happen. I don't know what that could be. It could be emotional sickness, emotional thing that you come together. It says together as you agree, do not perhaps by agreement. So we talk about this, but then it says and devote yourselves to prayer about it. Again, that's something that do we do that? Do we pray about it after this temporary hold or whatever? But then to come back together again, so that Satan doesn't tempt one another.
When I see this verse, I also think, it says, do not deprive one another except perhaps by agreement for a set time.
Mhm.
You often hear of spouses saying, well, I'm not doing that until they do.
Okay.
Using that as to hold over someone's head, right?
Okay.
That's not
Yeah.
an agreement.
Yeah.
That's not
Unfortunately,
trying to hold something.
we'll see this God-given gift used as a weapon
Right.
of manipulation or a weapon of, well, if this is not going on, then this is not happening.
That's a good word to use as a weapon. That's all.
Yeah.
Happens a lot.
Gotcha.
Well, that's the same thing as the silent treatment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It all goes together.
You shouldn't use things that you like to do or fun as weapons of,
Yep.
just,
Right.
I mean, we never, when the kids were in school, when we first got married, Deanna tried to tell Trevor he's gonna drop off of the team. I said, no, can't do that. Number one, he's done committed to the team, he's done made his commitment on a lot of other things, but we never did that ever again, or tried. We discussed it. So it would be the same thing with this here.
Yeah.
Number one, if it's a job I have to do, that's the only reason I'm doing it, I ain't too interested in doing it.
Right.
Right.
Good point.
I mean, but the agreement. No, I don't know, but you're right, it don't need to be used as a weapon at this point.
Right. But it's a gift from God, and we're using when we're doing that, it's ungodly. Um, Again, we talked about forgiveness. That's where forgiveness steps in here before we get to that point where I'm wrong, where we should be saying I'm wrong, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and I love you. Um, so that's something that we have to be very careful about. That can happen, that we see happen. Uh, okay. But what we see here, the importance of intimacy in their key principles, it's a mutual responsibility with one another. It's not selfishness, but it's giving, and it's not withholding except by agreement. Um, so what happens? We talked a little bit about this, but what happens in a marriage when intimacy is consistently neglected? Or what can happen? Or
Frustration.
okay,
Unfortunately, you don't necessarily have to go out of the marriage physically, but you can go out of the marriage emotionally.
okay,
And he says that if you lust after a woman, you've already committed adultery in your heart.
okay.
So all those things build up, and it just eradicates something that God put there for our pleasure.
Right, right. And exactly, you brought up those, and next thing you know, and he's talking to somebody at work or whatever, and this is what's going on here, and she's saying, well, she shouldn't be doing that, whatever. Next thing you know, something's going on, and that happens the opposite direction too with a man and a woman. So, but yeah, it's the emotional, the everything that we talked about, frustration, loneliness. Um, um, it can get to a point where it creates this bigger and bigger wedge within a relationship, a marital relationship. So,
We use the word agreement, and that's coming together.
yeah, it was an agreement. Yeah,
Giving up something, she may not be all that hopped up about having intimacy, and he may need it, but she needs something that he's not providing
Right.
her. So you have to come together and
and we have
find the middle ground.
All right, and that brings up a great point because we're going to now start. I mean, we've talked about the physical part of the intimacy, but when we start to think about it, God's made us all different, and it's most like we are two different man and woman as two different kinds of has made us so difficulty. And we're not only physically different, but we're also psychologically and we're also emotionally different. For a man, it doesn't, men are visually aroused and it doesn't take us a whole lot. Okay. But women are aroused more slowly through touch and through other acts of affection. And that's when we get into the fact that emotional intimacy is really the foundation of the intimacy relationship with man and woman. Um, Sex is more than physical. Um, it's emotionally connection fuels the physical intimacy. Um, and so that's where we have to get together and we have to understand that with one another, that we're all wired differently. Um, the foundation here. So how can we build emotional closeness with one another? And we've already talked about communication, but there's other things we can do. What can we do? We can spend time together. There's acts of kindness and affection, and there's trust. All these things that we can do to help build that emotional closeness with one another that will help us with the physical part of our relationship with one another. But we see that we have barriers to intimacy. What are some of our barriers that we have to intimacy?
Lack of.
Lack of, okay, well, lack of. But we live in a world where a lot of times the husband's working 40 hours a week, a wife's working 40 hours a week. You come home, you got kids, you got stress, You got fatigue. You know, that's, you know, someone brought that up here. That's a problem that we have. I mean, you know, unresolved conflict. I mean, if there's fighting going on, I really doubt that there's going to be a wanting to be physically close with one another. Bitterness, unforgiveness. Again, these are things that are barriers to intimacy. Um, Again, we bring up the C word again, poor communication with one another. These are all things that will lead to barriers that will make us so that we do not want to be intimate or be close with one another. Husbands, I bring up this unrealistic expectations, uh, demands, or whatever like that. I mean, there's things that we can do with one another or say to one another that will make it so that it's just unrealistic or what somebody's asking for. Again, this is a key verse here, and again, it's for husbands, but I think it says, husbands, in the same way, show consideration for your wives in your life together, paying honor to the woman as the weaker sex, since they are also heirs of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing may hinder your prayers. This is talking about dealing with understanding. So why you think is emotional intimacy so important to physical intimacy?
They're tied together. I don't think you can have one without them,
Okay,
especially to a level that you
right,
respect.
right. Yeah, it's
So like emotional intimacy, I don't know how men's brain works, but when women's emotional needs are met, right? You're just like on this, you're just happy. And like you go throughout your day happy, and people are like, oh, you're so happy. And you're like, oh yeah, cool, great. Glad you noticed. And then you go home and you're like, I was happy all day today because you did this for me. Thanks.
okay. Okay, see, and it talks about that emotional, how that affects things.
Well, if I don't like you, I'm not gonna have sex with you. I mean, that's emotional.
Okay,
It's, I mean, I'm just being blunt, but with the conflict, you know what I mean? Just, you have to be together emotionally.
you have to be together emotionally.
You kind of got to work. Although you're married and you feel like, okay, I've sealed the deal and everything's good, right? You kind of still have to be like, I got to still have her like me on some level.
Okay,
You know what I mean? So,
And it's not just for newlyweds, it's forever.
yeah.
you're right. This is not just honeymoon, guys. This goes beyond honeymoon. This goes
After kids.
after kids. This goes, yeah, you're right.
This is paying honor to the woman because of the weaker sex. I think that's poorly worded.
Okay,
Because in my opinion, it's like it's like your utensils in the house. Okay, you got frying pans. What do you do with frying pans?
You cook it.
Throw them over you throw them in a drawer, right?
Mhm.
You don't treat them very well, especially if you got those cast irons. It's no big deal, right? But your fine china, where does it go?
okay,
It goes in the china cabinet. It goes in a special place. It's for special times. It's special. The weaker sex, special. I mean, you know, instead of just, we look at that as strength and, okay, so I'm the man, I'm the big guy. I don't think that's what that's saying.
well, I don't either.
I think that that's saying that, and you can practice this if you want to, but if you'll put them on a different level
Mhm.
and you make sure people know that,
Mhm.
and you're always putting her on that level. I think you're honoring that weaker sex. Not that she's weaker, because if you can try my wife if you want to. Well, the only fight I'll take her to is on my side. So, you know, I'm just saying.
I agree.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, hopping off of those ideas, like, not like newsletter or anything like that, but if your wife asks you how you look, right?
Mhm.
And asks your opinion on something they want to get, or an outfit they want to try on, or like curtains or anything, right? For them to say, oh, fine, whatever. And it's just like, you don't love me anymore. Of course I love you. Be like, you still the same way as when I first laid my eyes on you. It's like, that's not, I don't care what you think the first time. I want to know right now. Like, tell me if I look beautiful, look pretty. Tell me all these things. Oh, you know you look pretty. No, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah.
That's where you have to learn, that's where you have to learn that men and women are different.
That's right.
We've had this discussion,
Yeah.
so I come out, which shoe, I don't care.
It's a shoe. She says, doesn't this shoe look cute? I go, I've never seen a cute shoe. I said, I don't know how you want me to respond to this? A cute shoe.
But that's your communication.
Yeah, it looks great.
Those are.
Well, you say that it looks great, but then that just, anyway. We're gonna talk about shoes. That could probably take us a while here.
Question that you set your spouse up for failure.
It's,
Yeah, I like that.
Going back to this, at one time I remember reading about, in some translations say weaker vessel.
Vessel,
And
okay,
as a nautical term,
okay.
a bigger ship would guide the smaller ships
Oh.
into safe,
I like that.
docking.
Okay.
So that's what you want to do. You're guiding them. You're
I
not
like that.
necessarily saying they can't do anything. It's a guidance.
Okay.
I look at it as not as weaker, but softer.
Okay.
Men are harder,
Sure.
women are softer. We need, if it was just a man world, we'd be a bunch of hard head losers out there, God put women in here to give us a little softness, a little humility, love. We need all of that, so.
I would say you need, in the emotional intimacy, you need to know your spouse. You need to know what your spouse is like. Not every spouse is gonna say, hey, how does this look? So you need to know this person wants something different rather than affirmation of how my shoe looks,
Yeah.
So you just need to know your spouse.
Okay.
That's just, it will turn around even after several
Okay.
years.
Okay.
You came out and goes, does this look all right? I said, yeah. He goes, you didn't see it. In the morning I saw it.
with us, it's you're not wearing.
So I guess you become each other after a while.
And that's true. Isn't that right? Isn't no? I mean, they say we start looking alike and we start, but anyway, we're over time.
Right.
Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry we kind of went over here, but thank you for your comments.